I'm Noah, 30 years old, and I run a survival skills training company. If that sounds like an odd career choice, let me take you back to when I was 18, when my parents left me stranded at a deserted campsite with nothing but a scribbled note telling me to find my way home. They thought it would toughen me up, make me a man, but all it did was cement my decision to cut them out of my life for good. That day wasn't just a harsh lesson. It was the moment I walked away from them forever. My name's Noah Wilson, and my childhood explains why I do what I do. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor, believed that only struggle could shape a strong person. From my earliest memories, they forced me to fend for myself in ways no kid should. No help, no warmth, just relentless challenges they called preparation for life. Their parenting was cold and unyielding, and when I hit 18, they took it to an extreme that broke any remaining ties. That day, I realized their house was never a home, and I vowed to leave them behind for good. It all went down on a sweltering summer afternoon, the kind where the sun feels like it's melting the world around you. The air hummed with the restless drone of insects, filling the eerie silence of the wilderness. My parents had chosen a remote spot called Oak Hollow Campground for a rare family camping trip, something they almost never did. My older sister Abigail and I sat by our pile of luggage, glancing around the desolate site. No other families, no groups of friends, just us, surrounded by dense, untouched forest. I couldn't remember the last time we'd gone anywhere together, but one thing I knew for sure. My parents didn't do things to create happy memories. We set up the tent, organized our gear, and sat down for a simple lunch of cold sandwiches and bottled water. Something felt wrong. My parents were too calm, too friendly, no sniping about me being lazy, no sharp glances when I took a moment to rest. Their usual harshness was gone, replaced by this unsettling, almost fake kindness that made my stomach churn. My dad leaned back, stretching his legs, and said, "Noah, go gather some firewood. We'll have a campfire tonight." Abigail caught my eye, a flicker of concern in her gaze, but she didn't speak. My mom chimed in, her voice oddly soft. "It's not far. Just be quick." A strange unease settled in my chest, but I'd never been allowed to push back on their orders. I brushed the dust off my jeans, stood, and headed into the woods along a narrow trail. They said it'd take about 15 minutes to collect enough wood, but they were off. Dry branches were scarce, and every time I bent to pick one up, a vague restlessness gnawed at me like a warning I couldn't quite place. 30 minutes later, I returned, arms full of wood, and stopped dead. The campsite was gone. No tent, no bags, no car, no parents, no Abigail. My heart slammed in my chest, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The site was wiped clean, like no one had ever been there. No trash, no tire tracks, just an oppressive silence that pressed against me. Then I saw it, a piece of paper on the rock where we'd eaten lunch. My hands shook as I picked it up, the messy handwriting glaring back at me. "Find your way home. This is your lesson." I read it over and over, hoping it was a mistake, but the words didn't change. At first, I thought it was a cruel prank, that they'd moved the camp nearby to mess with me. I shouted their names. "Thomas, Eleanor, Abigail," my voice echoing through the trees. Nothing. The campground, usually sprinkled with visitors, was completely deserted that day. Panic started to take hold, my throat tightening. Why is this happening? The question looped in my mind. I checked my phone, one flickering signal bar barely there. I dialed my mom's number. Call failed. A wave of anxiety hit me hard. I couldn't stay there. Night was closing in. I started walking along the trail leading out, eyes glued to my phone for any sign of a signal. After about 2 miles, sweat dripping down my forehead, I finally got a connection. I called my mom again. She answered after 3 rings. "Stop this and come get me," I snapped, my voice raw with frustration. Her tone was calm, infuriatingly so. "I'm not joking, Noah. Find your way back. It's what's best for you." I froze, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles whitened. Best for me? Leaving me in the middle of nowhere to fend for myself? She sighed, that condescending patience I'd heard my whole life. "Noah, don't be dramatic." Beep, beep, beep. The call cut off, and the signal vanished again. That was it. I had to get out, not just from the forest, but from them. I picked up my pace, my footsteps pounding the dry ground, my mind racing through options. They weren't coming back. I couldn't let myself be trapped in their twisted lesson. I dialed 911, holding my breath as the call failed again and again. For nearly 10 minutes, I walked, trying repeatedly until it finally connected. 911, what's your emergency? I exhaled, relief washing over me, but my voice was tense. I've been abandoned at a remote campsite. My parents left me here, and I can't get back. A brief silence, then the dispatcher's voice, professional but tinged with skepticism. "Can you give me your exact location? Are you injured?" I glanced around, trying to recall a sign I'd seen earlier. "I'm near the main trail by the entrance to Oak Hollow Campground. The closest town's maybe 10 miles away. I'm not hurt, but I've got no food, no water, and it's getting dark." She typed quickly. "Your name?" I hesitated, then said, "Noah Wilson." "All right, Noah. I've sent a location signal to your phone. Can you stay put?" Part of me wanted to keep moving, to push forward, but I knew they'd find me faster if I stayed. "Yes, I'll stay here," I said, my voice shaky, emotions swirling inside me. "We're dispatching a park patrol unit to your location. Keep your phone with you and call back if anything changes." "Got it. Thank you." The call ended, but inside, a storm raged. I wasn't just waiting for rescue. I was waiting for a new life, one free from them. After what felt like an eternity, I heard tires crunching on the dirt road. A black SUV pulled up, and 2 sheriff's deputies stepped out, their uniforms marked with the county insignia. One was rugged, in his 40s, the other younger, probably a rookie. "Noah Wilson?" the older one asked, his eyes scanning the area, assessing the situation. "That's me," I said, my voice tight but trying to stay composed. "Are you injured?" He looked me up and down. I shook my head. "No, I'm fine, but my parents abandoned me here." The younger deputy's brow furrowed, clearly thrown. "Abandoned you," he repeated. I nodded, gripping my phone tighter. "They drove off and left a note telling me to find my way home. This isn't the first time they've pulled something like this." They exchanged a glance. Then the older one said, "All right, we're taking you to the station. You can call a relative from there. We'll also be contacting your parents." 30 minutes later, I sat in the police station, a steaming cup of coffee on the table in front of me, untouched. The room was eerily quiet, and I felt out of place, but this was the path my parents had forced me onto. As soon as I arrived, I called my Uncle Benjamin, the only person in our family who'd ever stood up to my parents' harsh ways. Meanwhile, another officer was on the phone with my parents. 2 hours later, they all showed up. Thomas and Eleanor walked in, not with worry or regret, but with irritation, like I'd caused them some major inconvenience. Uncle Benjamin followed right behind, his face tense, his eyes burning with barely contained fury. The officer behind the desk spoke, his tone calm but firm. "Are you the parents of Noah Wilson?" My father crossed his arms and nodded. "That's right. Is there a problem?" The officer glanced at the report in front of him before looking up. "The problem is that your son called 911 after being left alone at a remote campsite. According to the report, you drove off without informing him. Is that correct?" My mother sighed, crossing her arms, clearly annoyed at the inconvenience. "Yes, that's correct, but he's 18. We don't see this as abandonment. We were teaching him a real-life lesson." Her words hit like a slap, and I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my cool. The officer tilted his head slightly, his tone slow and deliberate. "Are you aware that your actions could be considered abandonment of a dependent? He had no transportation, food, water, or immediate way to contact anyone." My father scoffed. "He's not a child. He's more than capable of taking care of himself. We did nothing wrong." Uncle Benjamin, who'd been silent, suddenly slammed his hand on the table. "Nothing wrong, Thomas. You left your son stranded in the woods like a reckless idiot. Do you two even understand what boundaries are?" My mother shot him a glare. "Stay out of this, Benjamin. This isn't your business." He let out a bitter laugh. "Not my business? Do you know how many years I've warned you about this? You think parenting means dumping your kid in the wilderness and telling him to survive? This isn't military training." My father folded his arms, his voice icy. "He's 18. He can handle himself, can't he?" The officer leaned forward, lacing his fingers together, his gaze locked on my father. "You're right about one thing, Thomas. Noah is 18, and that means you no longer get to decide for him." The room fell silent, my parents staring at the officer like he'd just knocked the wind out of them. Uncle Benjamin turned to me, his voice gentler now. "Noah, you can come home with me. You don't have to go through this anymore." I met his eyes and felt something close to safety for the first time that day. But before I could respond, my mother's voice shrieked, "No! He's our son! He's coming home with us!" The officer turned to her, his voice sharper than ever. "No, Eleanor. As you just said, Noah is 18. That means the choice is his." I didn't say a word. I stood up and walked straight to Uncle Benjamin's car, my parents frozen, stunned by a reality they'd never considered. They'd always believed they could control me forever, but for the first time, they realized they'd lost what they saw as their property. Uncle Benjamin followed, giving my shoulder a reassuring pat. I didn't need to look back, but I did. I turned to face Thomas and Eleanor, the people who gave me life but never truly treated me as their son. "Consider me dead to you from the moment you left me in that forest," I said, my voice eerily calm, every word sharp as a blade. My mother's mouth fell open, searching for something to say, but no words came. My father stood still, his face expressionless, but I knew he was shaken. I turned away and walked on. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to hold me back. That night, I couldn't sleep. Uncle Benjamin's house was quiet, but my mind was unbearably loud, replaying memories I'd tried so hard to forget. When I was 10, my mother deliberately left me behind in a supermarket. One moment, I was holding her hand. The next, she was gone, vanishing into a sea of people. I panicked, running through the aisles, calling for her through tears. 15 minutes later, I found her, and when I broke down, she just stood there, arms crossed, completely unmoved. "You found your way, didn't you? Good. Now you know how to take care of yourself." No hug, no apology, just cold indifference, like I was an animal being trained. When I was 12, I asked Abigail to help with my homework, and when my parents found out, my father shouted, "No one can help you. If you can't figure it out alone, you deserve to fail." That night, they forced me to study alone until 2 in the morning. No textbooks, no guidance, just the dim glow of a lamp and numbers I couldn't understand. Abigail was punished for helping me too. When I was 16, I had a high fever, my head spinning, my body burning, too exhausted to even sit up. I begged my mother to let me stay home from school. She refused, her voice cold and detached. Life doesn't stop just because you're not feeling well. Get up. So I dragged myself to school that day. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore and collapsed onto my desk, my whole body trembling. The teacher had to call the nurse, and only when the school contacted her did my mother finally come to pick me up. But she never asked if I was okay. She was angry that I'd inconvenienced her during work hours. And now, at 18, they had abandoned me once again. Exhausted, I drifted into sleep without even realizing it. The next morning, at 8, my parents showed up at Uncle Benjamin's house, their knocks loud and impatient, more frustration than concern. I sat in the kitchen, gripping my coffee cup with no intention of getting up. Outside, my father's voice rang out, irritated. "Benjamin, open the door. We need to talk to Noah." Uncle Benjamin set his newspaper down and stood. Before opening the door, he glanced back at me, silently asking if I wanted to see them. I said nothing, just shook my head. The door swung open, and Uncle Benjamin stood firm, his voice unyielding. "He doesn't want to see you." My mother immediately tried to push past him, but he blocked her. "He's our son. He belongs at home with us," she snapped. Uncle Benjamin didn't budge, his eyes cold. "You still have the nerve to call him your son? To demand he come home? You abandoned him in the woods and expect everything to return to normal?" My father's brow furrowed, and he tried to sound calm, but the irritation seeped through his tone. "It was just a lesson, Benjamin. Noah is blowing this way out of proportion." Uncle Benjamin let out a sharp, humorless laugh, his eyes filled with disgust. "A lesson that could have left your son dead in the forest with no one to find him, Thomas." My mother crossed her arms, her voice turning defiant. "This isn't your business, Benjamin. Stay out of our family matters." Uncle Benjamin inhaled deeply, then spoke slowly, deliberately, each word landing like a hammer. "No, Eleanor. The moment you abandoned Noah, the moment he had to call 911 to save himself, that is when it stopped being just your family's business." Silence fell. For the first time, they had no response. "Anything else?" Uncle Benjamin's patience was gone. "If not, leave." They lingered for a few seconds, as if waiting for something, but nothing came. Finally, my mother turned away, pulling my father with her. They stepped off the porch, got into their car, and drove off. That was the last time I saw them for years, the final image of them leaving Uncle Benjamin's house, carrying nothing but their pride and failure. 2 weeks later, I received an email confirming my acceptance into the University of California, Santa Cruz, for a business administration program. I blinked a few times, rereading it repeatedly, almost afraid I'd misread it. Once I was sure it was real, I set my phone on the table and exhaled deeply, letting the weight of it sink in before sharing the news with Uncle Benjamin. He was in the living room, carefully fixing an old radio, a soft click echoing as he tightened a loose screw with a screwdriver. When he noticed me standing there, he looked up, his gaze questioning. "I got in," I said, my voice calmer than I expected, though inside, everything was surging. Uncle Benjamin didn't say anything right away. He studied me for a moment, then gave a slight nod, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly, a subtle expression of pride in his quiet way. "Good. Now pack up. I'll help you move into the dorm." No over-the-top congratulations, no tears or dramatic hugs like in some TV show. Just acknowledgement and trust, and for me, that was enough. The day I moved into my dorm, my only possessions were a small suitcase and a backpack. I unpacked by myself, glancing around the modest, quiet room. There was no more tension every time I walked through a door, no more fear of being controlled or judged. But freedom came with responsibility. With no financial support from my family, I had to manage everything independently. I took out a low-interest student loan to cover tuition and immediately started looking for a job. At 5 in the morning, my shift began at a campus coffee shop. The first few weeks were tough. Standing behind the counter, making coffee non-stop before sunrise wasn't easy, but I adjusted. Somehow, having a packed schedule made me feel more grounded. On weekends, I took the bus back to visit Uncle Benjamin. His house wasn't too far, but just far enough to make me feel like I was stepping away from the intensity of college life. Uncle Benjamin welcomed me when I came home as if I'd never left. No lectures, no forced lessons, no disappointed looks, just a warm dinner, a cold beer waiting on the table, and conversations where I didn't have to watch every word I said. We sat there, sometimes talking about football, politics, or random things that happened at school. And that's when I realized family isn't where you're born, it's where you're valued. My college years weren't like most students. Between lectures and part-time jobs to cover expenses, I spent nearly all my free time developing skills I believed would one day be practical. After being abandoned in the woods by my parents, I knew I needed to learn how to survive. I devoured books on survival, watched documentaries on wilderness techniques, and studied escape strategies for extreme conditions. The internet became my greatest resource. I taught myself everything from starting a fire without matches to finding clean water in the wild to signaling for rescue without communication devices. The more I learned, the clearer the truth became. Most people have no idea what to do in an emergency. One day, during a shift at the cafe, I overheard a group of customers talking about a hiker who went missing in the woods. He'd been lost for 3 days before being found, completely exhausted, barely surviving. That was the moment it clicked. Why not turn my knowledge into something that could help others? I started small, creating a YouTube channel to share essential survival tips, things I'd learned from books, videos, and personal experience. At first, no one cared. But then one of my videos, How to Survive If You Get Lost in the Woods, unexpectedly gained thousands of views. I kept filming simple tutorials on my old phone, uploading them online, and soon I realized that many people were interested in this. Survival skills weren't just for adventurers. Anyone could find themselves in a life-threatening situation, and if they didn't know how to handle it, the consequences could be devastating. After graduating, I decided to take things further. With a little savings from my part-time jobs and a small loan, I officially launched my own survival training company. At first, it was just me. I did everything, from building the website to running social media ads to organizing in-person courses. I started with basic training programs: how to survive if lost in the wilderness, navigating when disoriented in the wild, signaling for rescue without a phone, basic first aid without medical supplies. I didn't just teach theory. I took students into real-life survival environments, hands-on training that forced them to adapt and learn. And it worked. Within a year, my company started gaining attention. Backpackers, hikers, even corporate teams looking for survival-based team-building experiences began signing up. By year 3, I expanded, partnering with rescue organizations and emergency response teams. And that's when I realized something. Everything I built today started years ago, on the day I was abandoned at Oak Hollow Campground. They thought they were breaking me, thought they were pushing me into hardship, forcing me to fail. But that moment, the lesson they forced upon me, became the foundation of my success. I became self-sufficient, just like they wanted, but not in the way they ever imagined. Throughout the years I spent building my career, my parents never once called or texted. No congratulations when I graduated, no questions about my job. It was as if I had never existed. And honestly, I didn't care. I knew they were fine because of Abigail. Even though I had cut ties with my parents, my sister and I stayed in touch. We texted regularly, sometimes called, and met up when we could. Abigail wasn't like them. She never supported how they treated me, but she also never had the power to change it. Still, she remained a part of my life, the one person I cared about in my family, and I felt okay. I had a career I loved, a life of freedom, and most importantly, I had stayed far away from my parents. That was enough. At least, that's what I thought. But a year ago, they dragged me back into their mess. It was just another ordinary weekend. I was in my apartment, enjoying the morning with a hot cup of coffee, scrolling through the news on my laptop, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A name I hadn't seen in 10 years. My mother. I sat still for a moment, staring at the name as if it belonged to some distant past. 10 years. No calls, no messages, and now, suddenly, they needed me. Of course, I didn't answer. Instead, I put my phone on silent, took a sip of coffee, and returned to reading. I wanted to see how long they would keep trying. The calls kept coming, 5 minutes, 10, 20. They weren't giving up. 40 minutes later, the ringing stopped. I looked at my screen. 42 missed calls. I let out a quiet laugh. Then a text popped up. "Your father and I are in serious trouble. Please help us, Noah. Call us back as soon as you get this." I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then, without hesitation, I deleted it. By noon, Abigail called. She never called me like this in the middle of the day, so I knew something was wrong. I picked up, and her voice came through immediately, tense but unsurprised. "Noah, are you free? Let's meet at the usual spot." I paused for a second, then nodded. "All right, 30 minutes." We met at our usual cafe, where we had always gone whenever there was something serious to discuss. Abigail had arrived first, sitting in our usual corner. When I walked in, she was staring into the distance, deep in thought. I sat down, looking directly at her. "What's going on?" I got straight to the point. Abigail looked up, pressing her lips together before speaking. "It's about Mom and Dad." I didn't react, just waited. She took a deep breath, then spoke slowly. "They tricked me into giving them money. They said it was for an investment and promised there'd be returns, but in reality..." She hesitated, her eyes darkening. "They gambled it away." I didn't say anything, just watched her, waiting for the rest. "Not only that, but they also took out a mortgage on the house." Abigail's voice dropped, laced with anger. "I overheard them talking, and that's when I realized they lost everything." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "They screwed themselves over and thought they could drag you down with them?" Abigail nodded, but then she lowered her voice like what she was about to say was even worse. "Noah," she hesitated, then met my eyes. "They've been watching you." I frowned. "Watching me?" "Yes. They know you're successful, they know you're independent, and they know you're making money." Abigail bit her lip. "They were just waiting until you were rich enough to come for you." I tightened my grip around my coffee cup, irritation creeping into my chest. So, this was their plan all along. Use Abigail first, then come after me. Abigail nodded. "And you know they won't stop. That's why I had to warn you. Be careful." The following day, they showed up at my company. I had expected this after 42 missed calls yesterday, and everything Abigail had told me. This was inevitable. At first, I considered avoiding them. I had a busy day and zero interest in dealing with them. But then a thought struck me. I had been running from them long enough. It was time to end this. They walked into my office, looking exactly as I remembered them, but they were no longer in control this time. My mother forced a smile, her eyes trying to appear warm. My father, as usual, kept a serious expression, but I could see the impatience behind his gaze. "Noah, you look so different. How long has it been since we last saw each other? My mother's voice was overly friendly, unnatural. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. 10 years, I smirked. They hesitated for a moment, but quickly regained composure. How have you been? We've always thought about you, my mother continued. I let out a sharp laugh, cutting them off. Get to the point. Why are you here? My father sighed, leaning forward. The thing is, we made some bad investments. The bank is about to take our house. Can you help us with $150,000? I raised an eyebrow, then laughed. Bad investments? I repeated, mocking their words. I tilted my head, studying them for a moment before shaking it. You mean investing in a casino, right? I already know everything. There was nothing left for them to hide. I met their eyes, my voice firm and final. Go home. I don't have money to spare, and like I told you before, I died the day you left me in that forest. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The fake smiles disappeared, replaced by anger and frustration. My mother crossed her arms, glaring at me. My father's tone hardened, no longer pretending to plead. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be where you are today, he said, planting his hands on my desk, staring me down. Leaving you in that forest made you stronger, gave you the survival skills that got you here. I stared at him for a second, then laughed. An honest, genuine laugh, not because he was right, but because I couldn't believe he thought that. At that moment, a thought flashed through my mind, one I never imagined I'd have: revenge. I looked at them, and my smile wasn't mockery this time. It was calculated. All right. My voice was eerily calm. You need $150,000 to get the house back, right? Fine. I'll give you $250,000, $150,000 to save the house, another $100,000 for your retirement. How does that sound? They froze for a second, then the anger vanished. For the first time in the entire conversation, my mother smiled. Noah, I knew you still cared about us. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. My father nodded, skepticism replaced with satisfaction. But then I continued. However, I have one condition. The air in the room turned ice cold. Silence. They waited. I crossed my arms and looked them straight in the eye. I will abandon you in the forest. My mother's mouth fell open. My father's face darkened, his brow furrowing. I spoke slowly, clearly, emphasizing every word. If you can find your way out within 3 days, I'll give you the money. A few seconds of dead silence, then my father slammed his hand onto the desk. You... His voice was low, seething. You ungrateful little bastard. This is how you treat your parents? I shrugged. Your choice. No one's forcing you. Calmly, I pressed a button on my office phone. Security, please escort our guests out. 2 security guards stepped in. My parents shot to their feet, their faces red with rage. You'll regret this! My mother shrieked as they were shoved toward the door. I didn't respond. I just leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, watching them get dragged out of my office the same way they once left me behind. I thought it was over after yesterday. My parents had been thrown out of my company, left with nothing to cling to. I had cut ties with them once and for all. But I underestimated them. The following day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it. I had a routine: enjoy a quiet morning, make coffee, and check my work emails before heading out. But the calls kept coming, one after another. Then my security guard called. I frowned and picked up. Boss, we have a situation. His voice was tense. You might not want to come in today. I paused. Why? There's a mob of reporters outside. Cameras, microphones, a whole damn crowd. The media's after you. A wave of irritation rose in my chest. What the hell did they do now? Right then, my phone buzzed again. My assistant. I answered, and her voice was shaky. "Noah, have you seen the video?" I frowned. "What video?" She took a deep breath. "It's everywhere. I just sent you the link. Watch it now." I opened my phone and clicked on the link. A video popped up. I hit play, and instantly I understood. My parents had edited the recording from yesterday. There was no footage of them begging for money, no context about their gambling debts or their attempt to manipulate me, no mention of the financial offer I made, just one single clip of me sitting at my desk, looking them in the eye, my voice cold and sharp. "I will abandon you in the forest. I'll give you the money if you survive for 3 days." That was it. Nothing before, nothing after, just that one sentence, making me sound like a heartless monster trying to throw my parents away for revenge. Below the video, the comments were a wildfire of outrage. Who treats their parents like this? This guy got rich and forgot who raised him. What a cruel, ungrateful son. They cared for him for years, and now he wants to dump them in the wilderness. I stared at the screen, a cold sensation spreading through my body. They did this. They went this far. As soon as the video ended, my phone rang again. Uncle Benjamin. I picked up. "Noah, are you okay?" His voice was low, tense. "I just saw the video." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "I can handle it." I wasn't surprised he called. He knew I wasn't the kind of person that video portrayed, but he also knew how ruthless the media could be. My parents didn't need me for 10 years, but now that they needed money, they had no problem painting me as a villain to get it. I didn't know what they thought would happen when they released this, but if they wanted a war, I wouldn't let them win. Right after my call with Uncle Benjamin, I dialed Abigail. She picked up on the second ring. "Noah," her voice conveyed worry. She'd probably already seen the video. I took a deep breath. "Abigail, will you help me?" There was no hesitation. "Of course. Meet me at your office at 9:30. I nodded, even though I'd enough so she couldn't see me. I wasn't alone in this. After hanging up with Abigail, I called my assistant. She answered immediately, her voice tense. "Boss, this is getting worse. The media's everywhere. They want a response." I leaned back in my chair, my eyes sharp and focused. "Invite every reporter into the company's conference room. I'll handle this at 9:30. She hesitated. "Are you sure? If this goes wrong, it could get even worse." A smirk tugged at my lips, but my voice was ice cold. "I've never been more sure." I hung up, grabbed my car keys, and left my apartment. Today, I wouldn't run. Today, I would end this. At 9:30 in the morning, I stepped into the conference room, Abigail beside me, the only family member I still trusted. In front of us, dozens of reporters sat waiting, cameras rolling, microphones ready. They expected a scandal, a desperate defense, a weak explanation, or even a bigger controversy. But I wasn't here to play their game. As soon as the questions started flying, I raised my hand, a silent command for them to stop. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. At that moment, the large screen at the front of the room lit up, and a video began to play. The complete, unedited footage from yesterday, no cuts, no manipulation, the raw truth captured by my office's security cameras. When the video ended, I looked directly at the reporters, my voice calm but razor sharp. "This is the truth. You've all seen it. I've uploaded this video to my page. Feel free to download and share it." The room fell utterly silent. 5 seconds. 10. A full minute. I scanned the faces in front of me. Shock. Realization. The journalists who had rushed to condemn me were now processing the fact that they'd been played. I shrugged, my tone void of anger, just stating the obvious. Even if they had agreed to my challenge, I never would have left them in the woods. I leaned back in my chair, voice steady. All I needed was for them to say, "We accept your challenge," and they would have received $250,000 immediately. I let that sink in before continuing. But instead of taking that offer, they manipulated the story, twisting the truth just to paint me as the villain. After I spoke, Abigail stood up, her voice trembling slightly, but her eyes firm, unwavering. They didn't just lie to the public, they lied to me. They took my money, promised it was for an investment, but in reality, they gambled it away. She took a deep breath, her hands clenched at her sides. I stayed silent for years, but today, I can't anymore. The entire room was dead silent as the reporters absorbed every word she said, capturing it all on their recorders. Everyone in that room had now seen the truth, and there was no coming back from it. That afternoon, the media exploded. The same outlets that had labeled me an ungrateful son were now scrambling to correct themselves. The original video spread like wildfire, dragging along a wave of new headlines. Truth twisted, parents edited video to destroy their own son. Who's the real villain? Noah's full story leaves public in shock. Parents gamble away their son's trust, all for money. I sat in my office, skimming through a few articles, but I felt no satisfaction. I didn't need the media on my side, I just needed the truth to be known. I unlocked my phone and scrolled to their numbers one last time, then I blocked them one by one, no hesitation. Finally, I deleted their numbers, just like they had erased me from their lives 10 years ago. Before leaving the office, I gave security one final order. If they come looking for me, turn them away. If necessary, call 911. I wasn't giving them another chance. This time, I was the one closing the door, and it would never open again. A year has passed since that day. Life has gone on smoothly, even better than before. My company is thriving, and I haven't been bothered again. Most importantly, I no longer think about them. But sometimes, news still finds its way to me, even when I don't ask for it. One afternoon, while sitting in my usual cafe, Uncle Benjamin called. "Noah, do you want to hear about your parents?" I was silent for a few seconds, then shrugged. "Sure, go ahead." He sighed lightly before telling me they had left town and moved elsewhere. No one knew exactly where, but it was clear they had lost everything. Through a distant relative, I heard their lives were miserable now. I didn't ask for details, and to be honest, I didn't care. They made their choices, and this is my life. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. Stay tuned to the channel for tons of exciting videos. Every day, we upload fresh stories packed with thrills and surprises. Don't miss out. Comment, share, subscribe, and hit that like button.